Thank you.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Sometimes, a single voice can bridge decades, a sound so familiar, so haunting, that it makes time itself stop. What if the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, could return, not through fame or fortune, but through the heart of a humble man from the streets of Manila? Under the bright lights of America's Got Talent, the audience expected another imitation act. But no one, not even Simon Cowell, could predict what was about to unfold. A quiet man with slick back hair and a trembling smile walked to the center of the stage, holding a second-hand microphone as if it carried his soul. His name was Ramon Cruz, a 42-year-old street performer from the Philippines. Ramon had spent years singing in public plazas, earning coins dropped by strangers who barely looked back. Yet every note he sang carried the echo of something powerful, the voice of Elvis, the king who had inspired him since childhood. Music wasn't just his escape, it was his only language of survival. Behind the curtain stood Mila, his wife, the woman who had sold their old scooter to pay for his flight to America. Her eyes followed him like a silent prayer, filled with love and fear. And beside her, their son Liam, barely 16, clutched a worn photo of his father performing at local bars, his tiny hands shaking with pride. As the lights dimmed, Ramon closed his eyes. He wasn't just about to sing, he was about to relive every failure, every tear, every dream that had refused to die. When the first note left his lips, the hall fell into stillness. The voice, it wasn't just similar to Elvis, it was Elvis. The warmth, the rhythm, the soul, it was all there. Simon leaned forward, his mouth slightly open, disbelief freezing his expression. In that single moment, one man's pain, love, and hope combined to resurrect a legend. And the world would soon learn, sometimes, greatness hides in the most ordinary hearts. Ramon Cruz's life was stitched together by melodies and memories. At 42, his voice was his only treasure, a gift he never asked for but one he clung to through every storm. He wasn't a man of grand dreams anymore, life had humbled him too early, too often. Every wrinkle on his face told a story of long nights under flickering streetlights, singing to strangers who rarely stopped to listen. In the narrow streets of Quezon City, Ramon was known as Elvis Encanto, the Elvis of the corner. His voice echoed through alleyways where laughter and hardship blended like an old song. Every evening, after fixing borrowed speakers and brushing the dust off his scuffed leather jacket, he would set up a small stage, just a crate and a mic stand, and sing. His audience was whoever passed by, jeepney drivers, children chasing stray dogs, vendors packing up after a long day. Despite the smallness of his world, Ramon carried himself with quiet dignity. He never begged for applause, he sang because it healed him. Behind that familiar smile was a man carrying invisible weights, unpaid rent, a cracked guitar, and the haunting fear of becoming irrelevant in a world that had forgotten voices like his. His mornings began with the same routine, brewing instant coffee, humming softly as he patched up his worn shoes, and whispering gratitude under his breath. Mila often found him gazing out the window, lost in thought, his eyes reflecting a mix of nostalgia and hope. For years, he had promised her that someday, somehow, someone would hear his voice, not as an imitation, but as a reflection of his soul. Yet, time had not been kind. The gigs had dried up, and bills kept arriving like unwelcome guests. But whenever he sang, the years melted away. For a few minutes, he wasn't a struggling father or forgotten singer. He was the boy who once dreamed of standing under real lights, in front of real people, singing songs that reached beyond his street. And maybe, just maybe, America's Got Talent would be the stage where that forgotten dream found its second chance. Ramon's life had always balanced between survival and hope, until the day that balance broke. Years ago, before his name became a forgotten whisper, he was part of a small band that played at weddings and small-town festivals. Music was his pride, his purpose, his reason to wake up each day. But when the pandemic swept through the world, everything stopped, the gigs, the laughter, the sound of applause. Silence replaced music, and for Ramon, silence was unbearable. Days turned into weeks, and hunger replaced rhythm. The band broke apart. One by one, his friends left for safer jobs, factory work, delivery driving, anything to keep the lights on. Ramon refused to give up his music. He told himself he'd never trade his voice for a paycheck. But when the rent notices piled up and their son's school fees went unpaid, guilt began to eat him alive. He started questioning everything. Was it pride or foolishness that kept him clinging to a dream that gave nothing in return? Mila tried to reassure him, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she quietly skipped meals so their son could eat, the way she smiled even when their electricity was cut off. Each time she said, "It's okay, we'll manage," it broke something inside him. The night that changed everything was when Ramon packed away his microphone after singing to an empty street. No tips. No applause. Just the faint echo of his own voice disappearing into the dark. For the first time, he thought about giving up, selling his guitar, finding another life far away from music. That thought alone crushed him. But as he sat under a flickering streetlight, a stranger approached, an old man who had listened quietly from across the road. He handed Ramon a few coins and whispered, "Never stop. You sound like..." It happened on an ordinary morning that would soon become extraordinary. Ramon was sitting on a park bench in Manila, his guitar resting on his lap, his fingers strumming aimlessly as if searching for a reason to keep believing. The crowd had thinned, and so had his faith. He was moments away from pawning his guitar, the last piece of his dream, when a young tourist stopped and began recording him on a phone. The song he sang that day was, "Can't Help Falling in Love." His voice cracked in the first few lines, but as the melody grew, something in his heart burst open. It wasn't performance anymore, it was confession. His pain, his love for Mila, his fear of failure, everything flowed through that song. The tourist stood motionless, tears in his eyes, capturing the rawest version of a man still fighting his fading dream. Days passed, and Ramon forgot about that encounter. But one evening, his son Liam came running home, phone in hand, shouting with disbelief. The video had gone viral, millions of views in just days. Comments flooded in from all over the world. "The voice of Elvis lives on in the Philippines. Someone get this man on America's Got Talent." At first, Ramon didn't believe it. He thought it was just another fleeting moment on the internet. But then, an email arrived, an official invitation from AGT producers who had seen the video. They wanted him to audition in Los Angeles. Ramon stared at the message for a long time, unable to move. His hands trembled as he realized what it meant. Years of rejection, humiliation, and forgotten dreams had suddenly opened a door that once seemed impossible. Mila cried when he told her. Not because of fame or success, but because she knew how much he had suffered for this chance. That night, Ramon walked to the same street corner where he had once thought of giving up. He sang again, this time not for coins, but for gratitude. That moment, that spark of destiny, turned his pain into purpose. The dream he thought was dead had just found its second heartbeat. The days leading up to his flight to America tested Ramon in ways he had never imagined. Every step of the journey was wrapped in uncertainty, from the borrowed money for his ticket to the fear of stepping into a world far bigger than his quiet Manila streets. He had never been on a plane before. As it lifted into the sky, he pressed his forehead against the window and whispered a silent promise to Mila and Liam, "No matter what happens, I'll make this count." In Los Angeles, everything felt foreign, the noise, the pace, the loneliness. The other contestants arrived with confidence and expensive suits. Ramon arrived with one suitcase, his old leather jacket, and trembling hands. The night before his audition, he stayed awake in his small motel room, staring at the worn-out photo of his family. Doubt began to creep in again. What if he failed? What if everyone laughed at him, a poor man trying to copy a legend? But then he remembered all the nights he sang under flickering streetlights, all the faces that had walked past him without listening. He realized this moment wasn't about fame, it was about proving that his pain had purpose. That his voice, no matter how small, could still reach someone's heart. He practiced quietly until dawn, each lyric carrying the weight of every struggle he had endured. By morning, he wasn't the scared man who came from nothing, he was the boy who had once believed that music could heal. When he stepped backstage at AGT, he saw the glittering lights, the massive crowd, the judges seated in awe, and for a second, his courage faltered. But then, deep inside, something shifted. The fear that had chased him his whole life began to fade. In its place grew a calm, fierce determination. He had finally learned that true strength isn't born from success, it's forged through struggle. Ramon wasn't here to imitate Elvis anymore. He was here to show the world his heart, raw, scarred, and alive. And that realization became his greatest transformation. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the massive auditorium. Ramon stood alone on the stage of America's Got Talent, the same small microphone now gleaming under the spotlight. For a moment, the world felt utterly still, as if it were holding its breath with him. His heart pounded so hard it felt like a drum beneath his ribs. Yet when the music began, something inside him softened. He closed his eyes and sang the opening lines of Can't Help Falling in Love. The first note trembled, then steadied, carrying the weight of every street corner, every tear, every dream he had refused to let die. The audience leaned forward, captivated. His voice, deep, warm, and hauntingly familiar, filled the hall like a ghost from another time. It wasn't an imitation anymore. It was resurrection. Simon's expression changed from mild curiosity to disbelief. His eyes widened, his lips parted slightly, as if he couldn't trust what he was hearing. It was as though Elvis himself had returned, not through glamour or fame, but through the humble soul of a man who had nothing but faith. As Ramon sang, his thoughts drifted to Mila and Liam, watching from home. He imagined their faces glowing with pride, tears rolling down their cheeks. In that instant, all the pain, the hunger, the sleepless nights transformed into pure, radiant joy. His voice soared higher, stronger, no longer burdened by fear, but lifted by love. When the final note echoed across the hall, silence followed. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, the audience erupted, a thunderstorm of applause and standing ovations. People were crying, cheering, holding their hearts. And Simon, the man known for his harshness, slowly stood and pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down like blessings from heaven. Ramon fell to his knees, overcome with emotion. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered a silent thank you, not for fame, but for the chance to finally be heard. That night, the world saw more than a performance. They witnessed a miracle, the moment when a forgotten voice reminded everyone that true greatness doesn't fade, it simply waits to be rediscovered. When the lights dimmed and the applause faded, Ramon stood backstage, holding the golden confetti in his trembling hands. It wasn't just paper, it was proof that every tear, every sacrifice, every lonely night had meant something. For the first time in years, he felt weightless. Not because he had won anything, but because he had finally let the world hear his truth. As he walked out of the theater that night, the cold Los Angeles air brushed against his face. The city lights shimmered like 1,000 memories. In that quiet moment, he realized that dreams don't belong to the young or the lucky, they belong to the stubborn, to the ones who keep believing when no one else does. Back home in Manila, Mila and Liam watched the performance replay again and again, crying and laughing through every second. Their small home, once filled with worry, now glowed with pride. Ramon's voice had not just changed his life, it had touched millions who saw themselves in his struggle. People who had once given up found hope again. Messages flooded his phone from strangers saying, "You reminded me to keep going." Ramon learned that success isn't about fame or fortune. It's about courage, the courage to keep singing when no one is listening, to keep walking when the path disappears, and to keep believing that your voice matters. His journey became a testament to the beauty of persistence, to the quiet power of faith that refuses to fade. In the end, Ramon didn't bring Elvis back. He brought himself back, the man who once sang on the streets with nothing but hope in his heart. His music became a bridge between what was lost and what could still be found. And perhaps that's the true magic of life, that sometimes, through the voice of one forgotten soul, the world rediscovers its own heartbeat. Because no dream is ever truly gone, it's only waiting for the right moment, and the right heart, to sing again.